We're here with Edmonds Municipal Court Judge Linda Coburn, and we're going to talk about jury duty. Good morning.
Good morning.
But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about you, because I think folks may not be familiar with your face. You are a relatively new judge to the court system, right?
Yes, I was appointed in January of 2015
Okay.
to fill an unexpired term by Judge Doug Fair,
Right.
who is now judge in South District Court.
Okay, good. And are you liking your job so far?
I love it. It's
Good.
a privilege to be able to serve my community in this fashion, so I very much appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and you've lived in Edmonds for a long time, I understand.
I've lived in here about 25 years. My husband and I raised two boys through the public school system here in Edmonds, so it is near and dear to my heart.
That's great. Yeah, and some people may have even seen you on the volleyball court, right?
Yes, that is my other passion. I'm very active in our own city's Parks and Recs program in volleyball, and I have competing teams that we travel to national and international tournaments.
Okay, good. All right, well, from volleyball on to jury duty. So tell me, what happens if you get a summons in the mail? And I guess some people may not even realize that we have court system here in the city. I think some of us are used to getting notices from Snohomish County for jury
Yes.
service, right? But you get a notice, a summons from the city of Edmonds for this. Are you required to appear?
Yes, whenever you get a summons for jury duty, whether it's municipal court or district court or superior court, it is mandatory. I think a lot of people don't read the fine print, but it is not optional. You must appear unless you've been officially excused. In fact, if you do not appear, the court does have the authority to have a contempt hearing, and if you are found to be in contempt, you could be jailed up to 30 days and fined up to $500. And in fact, state law makes it a crime, a misdemeanor, to intentionally fail to appear when you've been summoned. Simple misdemeanor, the maximum penalty is 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. So there are some true consequences for failing to appear.
Okay, and people may be listening to that and they're thinking, but you know what, they don't really mean it. They really aren't going to get me in trouble, right? Is that true?
Well, that's why I'm here.
Okay.
And the reality is that I could summons people for a show of cause hearing, but the reason why I'm here, I wanted to reach out is because of a recent experience at our last trial.
Okay.
So we summoned 30 people to appear. And through that process, people turn in their questionnaires, they ask to be excused for various reasons, and if I find that to meet the standard and excuse them, or I reschedule them. That brought us down to a number of 22 that we expected to appear for trial. For misdemeanor courts, the jury is 6 people plus 1 alternate, so that number would have been fine.
Yeah.
The morning of trial, 13 people showed up.
Oh my.
So that's very small, and it's such a small number that it's potentially could have been to where we could not have conducted trial if a certain number of jurors were excused. My clerk went and made some phone calls of people who didn't show up, who had turned in the question and had phone numbers for, and through that process we were able to get at least 2 more people to show up late. But because they were late, it delayed the entire trial by an hour. So this trial should have and could have been completed in 1 day, but for the fact that people did not respond in time, it went to become a 2-day trial.
Okay.
That inconvenienced those jurors who did respond timely, did appear, and of course it was a cost to the city to have a 2-day trial instead of a 1-day trial.
Right, and talk about the types of cases normally that are heard in a court, at municipal court. What are the kinds of cases that people would be sitting in a jury for?
We hear everything that's not a felony. So everything from driving while license suspended, to DUI, to assault in the 4th degree, malicious mischief, theft in the 3rd degree, criminal trespass. So anything that's not a felony may be heard in our court.
Okay. And so that sounds like there could be some interesting things. And, I think that brings up a good point that you and I were talking about earlier. Jury service is really a duty, of course, that I think a lot of us take for granted, don't really think of as maybe important, but it can be pretty interesting and a learning experience, too.
Yes, absolutely. And as being a citizen of our country, it should be viewed as a great opportunity to do your civic duty.
Yes.
And it is interesting. I've been fortunate enough that before I became an attorney, I was summoned to jury duty and actually served on a federal district court case, and it was very interesting. And I have since been summoned many times since then, but I was excused. That's not always the case, though. We've
Right.
had judges who serve and are not excused and actually sit in a box on trial.
Interesting,
So
interesting.
we have to do our duty as well.
Yes, yes, okay. Well, and so what happens if you are, part of a jury? Do you get a reminder notice or a text or something about when you're supposed to show up?
We send you a summons,
Okay.
and in that summons, it tells you when the term is. It gives you an important information hotline number to call
Okay.
the evening before you're supposed to show up. But you're not going to get any additional text messages or a reminder call. We're not set up with that technology. Maybe one day we will.
Okay.
But right now, your summons is your reminder. So when you get that, it's important that you put it on your calendar, put
Right.
it in your phone, and remind yourself to call the night before. And that's important because lots of times the trial gets settled, the case gets settled before trial. And so that line will let you know whether you actually need to report the next day or not.
Okay. And here's the question I think is on everybody's minds. I've got family responsibilities. I don't have anybody who can care for my children. I have a job that I absolutely cannot leave. I bet you've heard every excuse in the book.
Just about, just about.
So what do you say about that when people have those kinds of worries?
Well, first of all, we recognize that no matter who you are or what job you have, or if you're a stay-at-home mom, jury duty is going to impact your life. It's going to be disruptive. It's going to disrupt your normal schedule. It's going to disrupt your work. But that alone is not a sufficient reason to be excused from jury duty. Otherwise, we would never have jurors appear. So the issue is not whether it's going to be in hardship or inconvenience. It has to be an undue hardship or an extreme inconvenience. And when it reaches that level, then in fact, then you will be excused. And we also recognize that people plan ahead. They've got pre-planned vacation. They've got a special work event one time a year, and it just happens to be the time that you've been summoned. But we take that into account. Give us an opportunity to reschedule your jury duty. Say, I won't do it here, but offer another date when you can do it, and we would be happy to reschedule it one time for you.
Right. And that makes sense because obviously everybody's got important events they don't want to miss, and it's good to know that the court is flexible in that way to still be able to make sure you can
Yes.
serve.
And, we've had a lot of professionals who are important jobs, doctors, dentists, things like that, who question, like, they're serving the community through their role in their profession, and whether it's, important for them to come to jury duty. Well, it is. Jury duty, all of us in our experiences, life experience, plays a role. That's valuable to be sitting on the jury. So regardless of your profession or your social economic status, your life experience and your work experience is important, and we want that. I think a good rule of thumb is, am I able to schedule a vacation in my job? Because if you are able to schedule a vacation in your job, then you should be able to make arrangements to do jury duty.
The employer is going to figure out a way to cover your time, and most employers do allow for, are they required to
Yes.
make you available for jury duty?
By law, your employer is
Okay.
required to accommodate and make you available for jury duty.
Okay.
And if you happen to have an employer who is not aware of that, show them the summons, because I actually cite the law in my summons for you to show them so that they know that is a requirement.
Okay. And talk about the duration of the summons. How often is the commitment usually?
For our jury term, it's 4 days. It's Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. Most trials in Edmonds last 1 day.
Right.
The reason we have a jury term that's longer is in case, on occasion, we'll have a trial that lasts longer, or on occasion, we'll have more than one trial that's confirmed. If that's the case, then we may have trials back-to-back during that term.
Okay. And every juror gets, or potential juror gets, a questionnaire, right? And they fill that out, and then what happens? Do they bring it with them?
Yes. So you're sent a questionnaire when you're sent the summons. It's important to fill that out and send that in as soon as possible for 2 reasons.
By mail?
By mail.
Okay.
Or you can drop it off in person.
Okay.
That's fine too. But the reason it's important to do that ahead of time is, one, that information is then compiled and given to the attorneys before we begin jury selection. It helps them and the court prepare the questions so that the process can be much more efficient. Everybody's time is valuable, and this helps make sure that we are efficient. The other reason is when we get the questionnaires back, we are confident that they've gotten the summons, that they know about their date, and they're going to come. When we don't get that back, we're a little worried that they may be a no-show. So please do send those questionnaires back as soon as possible.
Okay. And another question, do you have to live in the city of Edmonds to serve on a municipal court jury?
I think that's probably the biggest misnomer. The answer is no.
No?
So we summons residents that are within the zip codes that cover Edmonds, 98026 and 98020. Those zip codes also cover a little area that's adjacent to Edmonds. So as long as you're within those zip codes, and that's all that we summons from, then in fact you're eligible to serve, and that's been determined by our state Supreme Court because that was challenged earlier. But if you want to think about it, we live in a small community.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure the pool is big enough so that not always the same people are always summons for jury duty. So if everybody did their part, it wouldn't be a problem.
Right, right. That's good. And I think probably we're talking mostly about Esperance, right? That would be the area that is in that area, and maybe some other incorporated areas.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And that reminds me, another point is the pool is based on driver's license number, identification cards, and voter registration.
Okay.
There are people who move but do not update those.
Yes, that happens all the time.
And so you're going to get a summons because we don't know that you have moved. So,
even if you're living in California.
correct. So you're going to get a summons but if that happens, simply fill out the questionnaire, explain the circumstances. But I encourage you to always update your address with both the voter registration and driver's license.
Okay. And you had already talked about that there are 6 jurors on a municipal court. I think some people are used to more of 12 jurors in other court systems, right? So
Yes.
that's what you're looking for. And the reason why you need a bigger pool is because obviously the attorneys are asking questions of the potential jurors, and they're looking for certain things that they may think might bias them against
Yes.
the defendant, right?
Right. The jury selection process is to make sure that, in fact, we have 6 people who can judge the case fairly.
Okay.
So a couple of things, bias, but also each side has 3 peremptories. They don't have to give a reason as part of the process. So we need to have a number to, when people are excused, there's additional jurors to fill those seats. Also, on the first day of trial is when we know the length of that trial. If, for example, you were summoned, you made arrangements to be available for that day, but you truly cannot be available for the additional 3 days, we will address that during the first day of jury selection as well. So you will have an opportunity to raise that issue.
Okay, so the bottom line really is show up first and then worry about the details later, right?
Correct.
Okay, very good. And then a burning question, do you get paid to be on the jury?
Barely. All right. So by state law, you are paid $10 a day.
Okay.
We provide a parking permit. We do pay for mileage. And if you happen to be deliberating during the lunch hour, we will buy you lunch.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
But beyond that, there is very little pay. And of course, that does not in any way make up for what you may be losing at employers. Some employers still pay their employees when they do jury duties, and many companies do not, which is very unfortunate. But it's important to remember that the reason why we're doing it is certainly not to make money. It's just part of our duty of having the privilege to live in a country with our Constitution, and to make sure that that Constitution has meaning, we have to have enforceable laws. And then we have to weigh to make sure that people are held accountable and that the system is fair, is we'd have to have all the participation from our residents through jury duty.
Right, okay, good. And another thing I think sometimes makes people wonder with jury duty is they get a summons one year and then all of a sudden they get another one. And it's like, don't I at least get a break of a couple of years? How does that work?
Yes. And if, in fact, you actually served on a jury during the previous year, you simply indicate that in your questionnaire, and we will excuse you for a whole year so you're not summoned again. But it's hard to keep track of that database because you may have served in a trial in Sonoma Superior Court,
Right.
or District Court, and we're
Right.
not going to know that.
Right.
But there's a difference between summoned for jury duty and actually serving.
Right.
So if you were summoned and you showed up but that you never actually served on a trial, that's wonderful that you did that, but that's not going to be a basis to excuse you to serve on another trial.
Okay.
But certainly, you look at it as another opportunity to get a chance to serve on that jury duty.
Well, that's great information. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to learn more about the ins and outs of jury service in Edmonds Municipal Court, we'll provide a web address for you to do that. And thanks for joining us, and thanks again to our guest, Judge Linda Coburn.